we are having our webinar that is talking about navigating the COVID-19 crisis in rural Kenyan farming communities. Feel most welcome as we go through this webinar presentation. I just want to advise that just for us to be able to take records and also to know who is in the meeting, you could just be able to, on the chat section, you can just write your name and the organization that you are representing. So you can just write your name, your position, and the organization that you are representing. That way, we'll be able to take the records of those that are in attendance. Before we start, we want to open this meeting with a word of prayer, and I want to ask Alex Kandie from Kenya Markets Trust to pray with us. Alex.
Thank you, Chris. Let's pray. Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity that's given to us to be able to congregate this morning and be able to have a conversation around the findings that of our recently conducted survey. Lord, we ask that even as we begin, as the speakers come on to speak, may you be with all of us. May you direct our conversations, may you direct our engagements, and may you make it fruitful to the benefit of the smallholder farmers that we'll be targeting, and even for Kenya in general. Lord, we thank you and we bless you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Alex, for that prayer. So I want to welcome you one more time to this webinar presentation. And I know we are all excited to be able to go through our presentation to understand what we are talking about and what it presents for us as Kenya and also within the globe. Now, this webinar is organized by Kenya Markets Trust together with Precision Agriculture for Development, that is PAD. And I want to welcome all of you to this meeting just to be able to inform us how are we going to run through this program. We are going to have a very short session, and we are going to start with the opening remarks. In the opening remarks, we'll have an opening presentation that will be done by Kenya Markets Trust. We'll have introductory remarks that will be done to us through the Ministry of Agriculture, and we are glad that we'll have Josephat Muhunyu, who is the Agriculture Secretary, giving us the introductory remarks. Then we'll also have a small presentation from Equity Bank, which is our partner, and that will be done by Esther Muiruri, the Associate Director of Food and Agriculture within the Equity Bank, talking about financing smallholder farmers and input enterprise in the new normal. Then we'll also have a presentation that will be done by Precision Agriculture for Development, presenting the results from the COVID-19 survey among farmers and agro-dealers. And after that, we'll be able to look at through lessons on how to maintain business momentum through tough times, a case of seed fertilizer and agrochemical industry. That will be done to us through the CEO of Seed Traders Association of Kenya, Mr. Duncan Ondu. And after that, we'll have a shorter presentation that will be looking at now rethinking access to agricultural inputs in the new normal. Then we'll open it up for plenary, and we'll have a final closing remarks from Head of Programs from Kenya Markets Trust. So briefly, that is how our program is going to run, and I want to welcome all of us to be able to go through this from the beginning to the very end. So at this point, allow me to welcome Michael Kamau. Michael Kamau is the Sector Manager in charge of agricultural inputs at Kenya Markets Trust, to be able to give us the opening presentation. Michael, karibu.
Thank you, Chris. As you heard, I'm Michael Kamau. First of all, I'll start briefly by introducing Kenya Market Trust. We are a Kenyan non-profit organization operating since 2011 and funded by Gatsby Africa. We focus in 3 key markets, and what we look at is how we unlock the potential in this market. The first market that we work on is the water, in the water sector. And what we look at is how to improve service delivery towards increased access to clean and safe water for domestic use. The other area that we work in is livestock, where we look at transforming the livestock and the meat sector through improved productivity and also value addition, especially in arid and semi-arid areas, and also connecting the production to viable markets. The other area that we work in, which is the subject matter of the webinar today, is agriculture inputs, where our target or the focus area is how do we improve access to appropriate inputs and also the embedded services like soil testing, and also how do we improve knowledge flow to the farmers for them to be able to improve productivity. In agriculture inputs, we work in 4 key areas. One is soil health, where we look at how do we improve access and awareness around soil acidity and also access to agricultural line. The other area that we work on is on the crop-specific fertilizer, or what other people call multi-nutrient fertilizer, and how do we improve access to that to the farmers for them to improve productivity. We also work with various stakeholders to promote adoption of good agricultural practices and also to enhance the knowledge at the farmers level. Another area we work on is how do we improve access to certified seed in the Kenyan market. And the last area we work in agricultural input is on how do we improve regulations and how do we improve standards for the inputs that the farmers use. To go to the agricultural inputs, first of all, we work around the production area, and that's where we concentrate in. And in line to this webinar, there's a line of key stakeholders who most of the time are forgotten, who are the Agrodealers. And these are the critical last mile channel to be able to access all the inputs through to the most of the smallholder farmers. And if you look at why is that critical, is that they serve a very big segment of the farming community in Kenya, who are in the rural communities. And if you look at the importance of the smallholder farmers in terms of the Kenyan agriculture, the food security is that they account to about 80% of agricultural production. But if you look at their productivity, still quite low, and that is like for maize is about 1.7 metric tons per hectare, whereas most of the commercial farms, they are able to achieve between 8 to 12 metric tons per hectare. And these farmers also don't use enough agricultural input or don't use them consistently, like the case of fertilizer from a study that was done by Tegemeo. Also, there's a big layer of other players. There's the regulators, there's also the industry association. So they are key to leading to improvement in standards, especially when it comes to self-regulation. If you look at what we got and from our analysis, internal analysis at the beginning, is that the smallholder farmers, their productivity was almost being disrupted by the COVID-19, and they are the main food producers. And so once their the production is affected, it means that it has a bigger impact on the food security in Kenya. And at the farmer level, what the challenges that were coming in is that there were disruption, a bit mostly localized on access of inputs and also other farm services. And in particular, when it came to extension services and also knowledge sharing forums, that was completely disrupted because most of them were towards what we call physical meetings, and there was a lot of disruption around that. Also, the COVID-19, or when it was reported in Kenya, the first case in March, that was around the planting time, and there was a lot of disruption in terms of agricultural labor markets, and also most farmers were suffering from financial distress because of the disruption in terms of the markets, output market. The other area that was coming in was that there was a decline in demand of input and sales at the beginning, but that was quickly corrected because there was a lot of resilience when it came to agriculture in terms of Kenya, and the sector has actually performed very well. I will get that when we deep dive into the actual presentation. But there also logistic disruption, both internally in Kenya at the beginning and also externally, that was leading to a lot of supply disruption. And also the financial support was becoming either unavailable or more expensive. If you look at the national level, one being there was a restriction in cross-border trades, and that was bringing a lot of issues. And it is expected that was due to the impact on the Kenya economy, there will be a bit of disruption in terms of fiscal deficit, and that might affect the investment in agriculture, in particular when it goes to the public investment. The other thing was the worldwide supply. Around July towards August, there was a bit of disruption, in particular in fertilizer supply chain, where a certain top-dressing fertilizer was missing because of the disruption that had happened in the manufacturing sector, especially in Europe during the early lockdown around March and April. Then there is a lot of issue around the volatility on the Kenyan currency, especially when the shilling is losing value in terms of, in reference to dollar. Because most of the inputs, in particular in crop protection and also crop nutrition, are imported products. So what are the 4 things that we as KMT feel that if there's a change in the way we approach that area can drive to productivity? One is industry-wide adoption of quality standards. And this is key because the moment a farmer gets a fixed or a substandard product, it means that he doesn't get the return on his investment, and that keep on discouraging them from investing in agricultural input. The other one is how do we adopt technology and other disruptive innovation, in particular when we try and leverage on the rapid growing mobile penetration, also the internet access in the country. And that will lead to reducing in transaction cost and also access to financial and also other knowledge sharing platforms, in particular the extension service. The other area that we look is how do we address information failure? As we all know in this forum is that the public extension services are overstretched. We're talking about an average of about nationally about 5,000 extension officers. And that's bringing you to a ratio of 1 to plus 900 plus farmers. So we need also to adopt other way to reach out the farmer, either using technology that is digital extension platform, and also how do we improve productivity and knowledge sharing, and also how do we share also knowledge on not only on inputs, on access to other markets. The other one is refocusing the role of government. There's a good way, goodwill currently, like this year, there's the e-voucher subsidy system, which is good if it's well targeted, because it's going through the normal distribution channel. The other area that we need to look at as a country, what is our investment in terms of research and development, and how do we create an enabling environment for business so that we're able to link the productive part of agriculture where the smallholder farmers fall, or the rural communities are, and also the markets. Thank you. That was my small presentation, Chris. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Michael, for that great presentation. Indeed, you have highlighted a number of issues that I know will be able to form part of our discussions when we get to plenary. And really, in that presentation, you've also informed us of who Kenya Markets Trust is. And I just want to encourage all of us that as we keep following, let us be able to note some of our concerns, some of the questions that we might have, and then at the right time when now we'll be having the plenary, we can be able to look through and mention some of the issues that could be arising from Michael's presentation. At this point, I know if we were in a fiscal meeting, we would have clapped for Michael, but we are not in a fiscal meeting, but we can just appreciate you by saying thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. The next stage now, we are moving to the presentation, the opening remarks that is supposed to come to us from the Ministry of Agriculture and Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock, Fisheries and Cooperatives. And at this point, we are privileged. I'm not sure whether we have Agriculture Secretary within us, but I want to believe that Mr. Josephat Muhunyu is ministers, and if he's around, he can be able to give us his opening remarks. Mr. Josephat, feel most welcome to give us your opening remarks. Thank you. Thank you, Josephat. Most welcome.
Thank you very much, Chris, for that. My name is Josephat Muhunyu, the Agriculture Secretary. I'm delighted to be here, and I'm happy to join the whole team this morning, and really appreciate the kind of representation that we have towards the farmers' agenda. I see we have quite a number of institutions that are represented, and that means that all of us are taking this issue of farmer matters seriously. First, I wish to bring greetings from the Principal Secretary, Professor Mboga, who was to join, but he was unable to join us today, but he is with us. I'm happy to join this conversation after our farmers have really had what I would call a heavy beating. All of you remember that even before COVID came, we had the first round of the desert locust attack, which really brought a lot of challenges, especially to our livestock farms in the northern regions of Kenya. Fortunately for the crops subsector, most of the crops had reached the physiological maturity, and therefore the destruction levels were not as severe. But you realize that livestock is also very, very important. Unfortunately to report, it's that again we are having the second round. They are again coming back. And now we are again running up and down to see how we manage them. So this is a phenomena that is again with us. Also, before the floods, before the COVID, we had the floods, which again affected most of our northern eastern regions, plus the western region, and also doing a lot of destruction to our rice ecosystems, and also interfering with a lot of our farming activities. And of course, a number of deaths were reported. And most of the people affected, again, were the small-scale farmers, or the smallholder farmers. Now, when COVID came, this again brought a lot of confusion, because unlike the earlier two phenomena, which we had some little experience with, COVID-19, we were all blank, and it was all over the world, so we couldn't borrow ideas from anywhere. And the first reaction was to come up with immediate and sudden measures to contain the pandemic. And that is where the curfew, the restricted movement, and all those measures were put in place. These, especially the first 2-3 weeks, were very difficult on us, because farmers could not access inputs as earlier reported, and also food distribution or food supply chain was also heavily affected. So the key issue therefore, and that was the key focus for the government, was to focus on the 3 A's, that is availability. Is the inputs and the food available? 2, is it accessible? So accessibility became another very important component of it, with the restricted movements both by the farmers and the traders along the value chain. That became a big challenge. And eventually there was the issue of affordability. Even if they are able to access, they are affordable. So a number of protocols were done by the national government, and also shared with the county governments. And we would say that after the first 3 weeks, at least people, we were not able to degenerate to the food crisis that was actually prominent, almost seen coming. Now, what is this telling us? One, we are in a scenario where unforeseen issues of calamities or pandemics are going to be with us. Climate change is with us, and all these unforeseen challenges are with us. And therefore, as we focus on how we assist or how we think about our farmers, then we need to critically realize that we may not change what is coming. So critical here is focusing on farmer resilience. They have to develop some mechanisms, adaptive mechanisms to what is ahead of us. And you may notice that we have been having certain scenarios where we have what I would call in brackets serikali saidia, where floods come, serikali saidia. When locusts are there, serikali saidia. When COVID is here, there, serikali saidia. How can we move our farmers from that syndrome? So we really need to focus on sustainable aspects, on resilience development, and we need to keep on borrowing from each other. Like if you look at the health sector, what they are doing now is that they are putting a lot of emphasis on insurance schemes so that at least everybody is covered where possible. So how can we also make sure that our farmers can be able to handle the risks so that we build on the risk management and ensure that they can somehow sustain themselves without having or relying on a lot of external support. And the issue of commercialization may therefore really require a lot of focus, a lot of discussion, because you realize that so long as our farmers are subsistent, they are not doing any business, then risk management becomes a challenge. And that is where you find that it is always left to the government and also to the private sector to handle, which may not be sustainable. So we didn't need to focus on the sustainable aspects, on risk management, and make sure that our farmers are risk able. They are able to handle the risks, they can take insurance packages and all that. So I'm really delighted to join this conversation on how farmers can be supported. And of course, for us to focus on policy orientations, decisions and all that, there is need for information. And such a study that has been carried out by Precision Africa for Development, PAD, and the Kenya Market Trust is a very good eye-opener so that we are able to access information and data that can assist us in policy making, decision making, and sustainable development for our small-scale farmers. So I wish to thank those institutions that have done this, and really it is exciting to know that we are going to share a lot ahead. Sorry, you will excuse me later on after about an hour or so. I'll need to jump out a bit to another function that I'm actually already in. I'm in Naivasha, so that we move on. But I'm very grateful. And lastly, I wouldn't forget to mention that I'm happy to see Borus Daina, who was my workmate many years ago in this call. Thank you all, and God bless you as you handle the farmers' agenda. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Josephat Muhunyo. Actually, we we are very excited to have you, and the presentations that you have made are quite important and quite informing. There are things that were it not for the ministry, we will have not understood that there is again an influx of the desert locust. So it is really important, and some of the highlights that you have mentioned, and what is coming out from all these presentations, including that which you have done, the one that you have done, the one that Michael has done, is that there is concern for the smallholder farmers, and there is very important value that is played by the smallholder farmers. And these smallholder farmers, they are a very important, part of the supply chain. They are doing an amazing work. But then the COVID-19 pandemic presents a great challenge to them, not only in terms of access, but even in terms of food distribution that also goes ahead, also to affect the whole of the supply chain, including the consumers. So the aspects of risk management, how do we ensure that there is a plan that is put in place to address some of the risks that come with that the smallholder farmers face. For example, you have mentioned issues around floods. You have mentioned issues around, the inversions that come, the climate change and such. But also importantly, there is an important role that all of us must play, all actors must play when it comes to enabling business environment and the role that, this kind of study also plays, that is informing research in terms of research and development. So for decision makers, for policy makers to be able to make the best of the decision, then it is very important that, the role that now we are playing, the purpose for this meeting, presenting of the results that have been found is very key. So I see again an important role that research plays in terms of policy making. So thank you so much, Mr. Josephat, for such a wonderful presentation. At this time, again, we want to divert a bit just to be able to now look at what the financial institutions have for us. So from the presentation that we have now, we are going to look at how then do we finance smallholder farmers and input enterprise in the new normal. We call it new normal. COVID-19 is here with us, and there is so much that is affecting. So how have banks now also come in place to be able to finance smallholder farmers and to be able to look into how they can best support the smallholder farmers in terms of financing? So to take us through that presentation is one of us, Esther Muiruri, who is the Associate Director of Food and Agriculture in Equity Bank. So Esther, please take the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. I really also appreciate this opportunity to talk about the interventions we can bring in as a financial institution. And as I talk, I'll be talking from two angles because at Equity, we talk about one Equity. Part of it is about insurance. Part of Equity is about Equity Group Foundation, and also the bank that do lending to farmers and provide what we call financial intermediation, because it's not only credit that is required, it's also, there are also other products that are required in a sector like agriculture. And I would want to start by picking where the Agriculture Secretary has stopped by saying that, yes, there is a crisis and we are inside a crisis, and it's not for Kenya, it's a global crisis affecting so many across the world. But when we look at this, initially it was like a healthy crisis, but later on started evolving like an economic crisis. And when it is an economic crisis, it also affects food security, and that is very core to our livelihood and everything. So it's a very important topic. And I really want to also appreciate the organizers for this forum. And I know we have a great audience here who are stakeholders and the players in the food and agriculture sector, which we can combine heads and see how we can overcome this challenge. And what we see is that the agriculture sector has talked about many challenges, including locust, including climate, including the COVID itself, and all the challenges that the farmers face. But I think from where we come in as stakeholders or partners is to try to see what solutions what packages can we put across there? Because one of the lessons we have learned is that even when there was lockdown, I don't want to call it total, but there was lockdown. There was no movement of people from one place to another. The only exemption that was given was for those who are transporting food. I could see a lot of the people we work with, our customers who are telling us, I have to go to Naivasha to pick this product to come to bring to the market, because even if many of us are unwell, we still have to feed. So I think one of the things that we pick here is as much as we are talking about the challenge and a crisis, we can also be able to pick some opportunities. And I think where this crisis has positioned agriculture and where it has put farmers, it is on a very high platform where everybody need food. Even if you cannot do anything, you have to eat, whether you are sick or you are well. So that is, first of all, very, very important for us to know that the crisis has positioned farmers at a very high level, how important they are. And I hope from wherever they operate, because we are the ones who talk to the farmers, we are the ones who interact with them. This is a time to really show them and demonstrate to them how their role is important. And it's not only in Kenya, because when we export products outside there, those products that we export from farmers, it becomes income for them. And on the other side is like solving a crisis. So I look at it from two sides, from both the opportunities and the challenges. And I say what we need to do is provide the opportunity or support the opportunities which are there, so that the farmers can be able to make up even if it is a difficult time, and nobody has certainty on when this is going to end. Michael also talked about the challenges that were there at the beginning. It was a planting season. We were all prepared to offer financial services to the farmers and to everyone who is a player in the agriculture value chain. But unfortunately, that was not possible in most of the areas, because people are trying to come to terms with what is going to happen. And a lot of people are even buying food to stock. And I could see some of the people who are laid off, they started seeing an opportunity. And a lot of them were using even their cars around the roads, trying to provide food services around the road, so that people can pick from there. So you see, there are many opportunities. And I think this is what the farmers really need to understand, that their role is very important. And it is not business as usual. It is business unusual, because they have to go ahead and produce even more. Like the other day, I was in the market trying to buy oranges and lemons, and I could see the traders who are trading with the lemons. The price is so high, it's unbelievable. Just because the supply is lower than the demand, and the law of the supply and demand comes in, and then the prices go up. So for farmers, this is an opportunity to also put a few plants like avocado trees. When the rains come, try to put mangoes on the ground. Those trees which on one side they seem like a climate response, but on the other side is an income flow on the other side. So when we look at it that way, we encourage farmers to take loans. And by the way, we also offer loans even for planting trees, including mangoes, avocados, macadamia, and all the others. So this is also an opportunity for them to know suddenly those trees, maybe we see like maybe lemons are not very important. Suddenly they become very important, and everybody is looking for them. So those are the opportunities I'm talking about, and we are willing and we are ready, and we have packages ready to provide for this intervention. The other side I also want to speak to is about technology, because what we have seen is that as much as we might think the rural population are not, they don't adapt technology, we saw even the people who could not go to church, they were able to follow church services. And that is a message to tell us that the farmers and the farming community, including those who work with the farmers, they can adapt to a situation and be able to really follow up and get, like, for example, get payments for their produce. They can be able to get communication on what is going on in the market, and therefore they're able to. So what I saw is, and what I'm seeing even now is that adoption of technology has come to another level. A conference like this one, if it was normal times, we would be all in taxis and vehicles and moving and looking for hotel rooms and all that. But you can see, we can still be able to communicate because we have adapted technology. So I think the other thing that we need to do for our farming communities and those who work with farmers is to encourage them to take up technology, because technology is outmate now and it is the way to go. And we don't know how long this will take, but some of the good practices that we have adopted, we are likely to go with them even to the future because they are efficient, they save money, and we can still be able to see one another when it's really a must that we see one another. So we have also, we are trying also to see how to encourage the farmers to take up technology, particularly using the channels that are available with the financial institutions, including ourselves in Equity. We have tried to bring banking to the village, where to the dearest place where the farmer can be able to go as they sell their milk. They're also picking maybe some other stuff from the shopping center, and so the bank has actually gone where they are using technology. And we want this message to be very clear. I was in a conversation, I think yesterday or the other day, with a team that was feeling like farmers may not be able to take up this technology. But the truth is, they have to learn, and they are learning, and we are seeing very good responses. What we need to do as stakeholders is to encourage them, to tell them it's the same way you listen to the church service. It's the same way you are using a WhatsApp message from your chama or from your group. It's as easy as that, so that we make it simple for them to adapt, so that they don't have to travel. Because, like, for example, when they travel to come to the bank to pick maybe certain services, they spend money, they use a lot of time to come and do that. And sometimes they might even come to queue if they find other people in the queue. So they can be able to use technology from where they are, and they are still able to do the things that they are able to do more conveniently. So we really want to encourage them to use technology. The other factor I see as very important during this time is the issue about collaborations. Because when we collaborate, when we work together through networks, through organizations, we are stronger than when we work individually. And this has been very common, especially for those farmers who have been producing maybe for a certain market. And here also the market become very important. And that's why this meeting is also very important, because it's about market and how to access a market. Because when they are in an organized market, it's very easy for them to access finance and also to get training, because even training these days is also happening through virtual processes. And we are able to reach them, they're able to ask questions, we are able to respond to their questions, we're able to link them with the other networks. So the whole thing about partnering, collaborations, networking, I think is very, very important at this time of crisis, because we need to strengthen ourselves by, working through others, because everybody bring on the table some expertise of some sort. The conversation here was about soil testing. They need to know how to test their soils, so that when they are borrowing money to use on their farms, they are not just borrowing because last year they used maybe a certain fertilizer. They need to test their soils. And one of the things that come here is that maybe testing soils is very expensive, but we need to demystify that by trying to show them the benefits and explaining to them why it is important for you to test your soil before you invest on that, or planting a crop which you might plant. Like I saw the other day, somebody planting tomatoes and the soil was not tested. So the whole crop went off and it had to be uprooted. You can imagine a farmer now observing such a cost. And sometimes maybe he doesn't even have insurance. And I think the other thing that the crisis brings is the importance of insurance. And I said in our package at Equity, we also have an insurance agency. And we are trying to encourage farmers and players within the agriculture value chain to take up insurance, because it's very important. We are hearing from the Ministry of Agriculture issues about locusts. So if you have insured your crop and there is attack from locusts, then you can be compensated. You can be taken back where you are. So, but when we go to sell insurance out there, there is a lot of resistance and a feeling of like it's very expensive. But I believe if we work together as stakeholders, And in our forums, we try to mention the importance of insurance. I think they start now appreciating that this is something good for us, and it is important for us to take up insurance so that we are cushioned against the challenges that come in. In terms of packages that we have worked through a lot of partners, collaborations through many partnerships, and we have developed such projects and programs that can be able to address the current challenges. Like, for example, there is a partnership we started with government some years ago, I think around 2008 or 2009 or thereabouts. And this product was targeting farmers. In fact, it was the first time that we financed small-scale farmers in a very big way. And it was a package that was to smallholder farmers through the Agrodealers. And of course, the suppliers, those who supply, manufacturers who supply the Agrodealers and the distributors, the whole of that value chain. And because this package was targeted for the smallholder farmers, the intermediaries, those who are in between, the distributors, the stockists, they became also beneficiary to that package. And that project is still available, because what we didn't come up with a project and say it's for 3 years. What we did is we developed a product that we can be able to package with whoever partner it is or whichever area it is, but it targets certain crops like maize, potatoes, the category of cereals. And we have seen the uptake. We have seen, in fact, some of the farmers we started with, they were struggling initially. In fact, I can recall some group of farmers who are beneficiaries of World Food Program by the time we were starting with them. And by the time we were doing like a second season, they were already suppliers to World Food Program. And that is the kind of transition and transformation we would want to see. We want to see our farmers, because some of them were struggling initially, but later on we could see they even picked entrepreneurship roles. One of them buys a tractor and started applying for other farmers. The other farmer becomes an input supplier, so starts now an enterprise. Initially was a farmer, but now has become an enterprise. And we have very many cases like this, where they can be able to grow and develop and move on and be like any other business. And demystify this fear of agriculture is very difficult to finance, agriculture is very difficult to manage. And we are seeing even younger people now coming on board. So such a product, I think, which is still available, and we are calling upon those of you who are working with groups of farmers, those of you who are offering services, you can be able to tell them that those products are still available, and they can come to us and we can be able to support them maybe in the next season, because this season is almost coming to a close in terms of input supply. But we have also another project that we are working with the government of Kenya together with the IFAD, and this package is targeting again farmers who are like marginalized. They are resource poor. They are not able to raise to buy certified seeds and qualify. Certified fertilizers. So through this program, which it targets about 72,000 farmers for us, and it is touching about 8 counties. And we have seen a lot of farmers also coming in and taking up the product, which is partially a subsidy support from IFAD and through the government of Kenya with funding from EU. And what we see is a lot of entrepreneurships coming in, because those who are aggregating produce from farmers become also people who require financing, because at the time of harvest, they require to have money so that they are able to mop out the crop and be able to take it to some organized market. So that is also another package that we have. The other package I would want to talk about is a project we also have in about 27 counties in this country. We call it financial access for SMEs and rural population using technology. And what we do through this project is, because of the challenges that everybody speaks about, including the ones we have just had, what we have done is come up with a package where we have put our officers in all those 27 counties. And what our officers do is try to identify what are the financial gaps. and also to demystify this fear of like, I cannot get a loan because I'm only doing farming, because it's not true. What we need to know is that you are in an enterprise, and we look at agriculture as a business. That's why we also call it kilimo biashara. So that those who are in farming and those who are supporting farmers can be able to access finance. But what is surprising is that even as we put all these efforts, sometimes you don't see those people coming out. I don't know whether it's out of fear, and that's why forums like this one, we need to talk about this so that we are able to reach, the information can reach out there. And I know there are many in this audience, there are a lot of people who are working with either group of farmers, but they still flag access to finance as the elephant in the room. And we try as much to tell them, it's just a question of talking to us and letting us know what you're doing. And we'll be happy to work with you and be able to take you to the next level. So our interventions are very many. If I start talking about them here, I might eat up the time for the other presenters. But I will say, because of the way our business model is, we do both development work, like training farmers, helping them to access finance. But on the other side, we also do lending through the bank. So, and it's not lending again alone. It is lending plus any other services that that the farmers and the farming communities may require. So, my appeal to the audience here is, let us work together through collaborations. Let's go through partnerships. Let's reach out there and let them know that financing is not a challenge. The challenge is when you just sit down and you just talk about it today, tomorrow, and maybe you're not doing anything about that. So we'll be so happy to get more networks through this forum, and we'll be able to support this sector even during this time of crisis and even beyond. So I think that's what I would want to say. And of course, I can be able to respond to questions. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Esther, for that presentation. I think you've highlighted key issues, which we'll also be able to look at, and of course, perhaps there could be questions in the end around it. But I just wanted to mention the power of networking, collaborations, the power of technology, and the important value that the livestock the farmers play when it comes to food security, and the bank responds very effectively to those aspects. So at this point again, because we are behind the time, allow me not to dwell so much on what you have highlighted, but allow me to move to the next session. And I just wanted to mention to all of us that although the timetable has been highlighted, has been mentioned, has been shared with all of us, but where we are at the point where we are now coming to the section where we want to present the study results. So we'll be led by the Precision Agriculture for Development, where they will be sharing with us what were the results that they found from the survey. And so at this time, I want to invite Samantha to be able to make the presentations of the survey results. Then after that, we'll be getting some perspectives, some lessons from STAC, Seed Traders Association of Kenya, and we open it up for plenary. So Samantha, most welcome.
Hi everyone, let me share my screen. Hold on. Share screen. Great, can everybody see my screen? Okay, I'm going to trust that you can see my screen. Hi, I'm Samantha Strimling. I am a research associate for Precision Agriculture for Development, and I was assigned to this survey. I conducted the survey and I compiled these results. So we're just presenting to you today. Today we will focus on the second round of the COVID survey, because that is what we did with Kenyan Markets Trust in conjunction. We did a previous round a few months prior. Before that, I just wanted to give a little bit of background on who we are. So Precision Agriculture for Development focuses on digital advisory services for farmers. So that is providing advice over text message or interactive voice recording. Our main offices are right now in Kenya, India, and Ethiopia. But we also do work in Uganda, Rwanda, Zambia, and we're opening new offices currently in Pakistan, Brazil, and Nigeria. So I'm here today. The African country director for our organization, Emmanuel, is also here. And I encourage you to leave any questions you may have in the chat, and I will try to get to them as much as possible. So I'm just going to go through basically an overview of the results, and then for sure I'll be willing to answer questions that come up either in the chat or during the discussion period later on in the webinar. So first of all, the survey that we'll be covering here today took place from July 28th to September 3rd. So there were first a survey of crop farmers. We surveyed almost 1,000 crop farmers. You can see a little bit more about the demographics here, but we covered nearly every county in Kenya. We purposely excluded the Nairobi and Mombasa because we were focused on rural areas. And we stratified by geography to make sure that every county was represented. The next survey, we interviewed almost 500 agri-dealers. And again, we tried to represent every county as much as possible. And you can see some information about who we interviewed here. I guess one other thing I should have mentioned about precision agriculture is in Kenya, our primary service that we currently offer is called MOA Info, and it is a digital advisory service for crop farmers that we currently offer in conjunction with the Ministry of Agriculture. And I think there's a comment in the chat right now that I want to respond to, which is that most farmers don't have smartphones. We actually have surveyed farmers, and it is only about 30% have smartphones. However, most farmers have phones of some type, or at least they have access to a phone through their family. And that is actually something that has changed a lot in the past few decades and allows us to reach a lot more people with basic advice. So we do a combination of push messages of the sort that you may get from other services that you belong to, with just information about best practices. We also try to create services that are dynamic, where farmers can provide us information, for example, about the types of crops that they're growing and where they're located, other information, and get recommendations on seeds, on fertilizer, etc. Also, to go off another comment that was made earlier in the presentation, I think by the Ministry of Agriculture representative, dairy is very important in Kenya, and we are currently in the process of trying to launch a dairy survey. And actually, during the first round of surveys for COVID, which took place in April, we did interview about 100 dairy farmers. But right now, we have a lot more access to crop farmers and agri-dealers because they're already registered on the MOA Info platform, which we had launched in 2017. So it's been up and running and has a stable membership that we can choose from for these surveys. And the surveys took place over the phone. Respondents were called about 3 times. Each survey was around 30 minutes, and we'll be presenting some results today. So this slide and the next slide will just cover a little bit about where the farmers are. As you can see, mostly located in Western and Central. Shouldn't be surprising given where a lot of the population is for Kenya. You can also see some of the statistics by county here. I'm not going to go through everyone, but if there's anything that stands out to anyone, I'd be happy to go through it. This is the same sort of chart, but for agri-dealers. So the agri-dealers were registered on our platform through a combination of in-person and phone outreach and working with organizations that partner with agri-dealers to enroll people in the platform. Obviously, you know, in order to beat agri-dealers are more prevalent in areas where there's more central markets. So I think that's part of why we're seeing more agri-dealers located in big cities than in the farmer survey. Okay, just an overview of the results I'll be presenting today. Farmers are really optimistic about the current harvest, and by that I mean from the short rain season that just finished. But they're really anticipating financial difficulties that will prevent them from purchasing the inputs they need for the, I should say, oh, no. Okay, so they were optimistic about the current harvest, which at the time that we were interviewing was in August. So they were harvesting from the previous season, but they were anticipating difficulties with purchasing inputs for the following season due to finances. Additionally, they're continuing to face food shortages and financial distress. And on a positive note, agri-dealers are adapting to changing conditions by revising their sales practices, their stocking practices, their operations, so that they can continue to serve farmers even with restrictions in place and health concerns. In terms of recommendations, since we do anticipate, or since farmers anticipate financial difficulties, we do definitely want to make sure that the advice that we're serving them is applicable. So making sure that the advice is not necessarily capitally intensive. And then another thing that we wanted to try to implement as an organization are some communication channels, both between agri-dealers and their suppliers, and potentially also between agri-dealers and farmers. And then this is sort of outside the scope of PAD's work, but I think applicable to the information that we just received from the previous presenter, that short-term loans, cash grants, enabling agri-dealers to stay in business may be helpful right now, given financial difficulties faced by farmers as well as agri-dealers. Okay, so this is the first and probably the most worrying set of results, is just about the financial distress, the food shortages, as farmers attempt to adapt to the circumstances. So I guess I want to start with the bottom of the slide. You can see a number of circumstances that a lot of the respondents to the survey are experiencing. So reducing the number and portion or size of a meal, reduced market access due to mobility restrictions, income decreases leading to inability to buy food, maize price increases, difficulty buying food due to market changes. All of these circumstances were being observed. And during the first round of surveys, we weren't entirely sure whether that was due to it being lead season and seasonal cycles. But something that we asked in the second round of surveys was, during the same period last year in which there was no COVID, but presumably they would be in the same agricultural cycle, did you experience similar issues? And as you can see, many fewer respondents experience those issues. So we can confidently say that this is likely due to COVID. We also interviewed farmers about their coping strategies. We see a lot of farmers spending their savings. We see a lot of changes in the remittances that farmers are receiving, as well as the remittances that they're able to send to family members in other places. We see a lot of farmers selling assets, and what's really worrying about that is we asked a follow-up question of the assets that you're selling, how many of those assets, or what percent of those assets are productive assets? So livestock, vehicles, things that can be used to generate business in the future. And of the people who sold assets, 72% reported that those assets were productive assets. So we're seeing, financial effects that will likely continue beyond the pandemic. That's really concerning. I think Another thing to note here is just that farmers are also making changes in their lifestyles as a result of the pandemic. So in addition to selling assets and spending savings, borrowing money is another point that I didn't highlight previously, but you can see on this chart. People are also taking in family members, getting new jobs. So I think the main point of this slide is that there are current problems associated with food access and availability, but those are also leading to larger effects that will persist, even if, for example, we got lucky and got a vaccine tomorrow, we would still have a lot of challenges that farmers will continue to face as a result of the pandemic and the lifestyle changes they've made. So again, as I mentioned earlier, we're seeing high observed input prices, and those are passed on from suppliers to Agrodealers to farmers. So for both the farmer survey and the Agrodealer survey, we asked about the major inputs that people are buying. Those are fertilizers, seeds, pesticides. Agrodealers were actually asked about the previous 2 months, whereas farmers were asked about the previous year. Yeah, so that's potentially a mismatch that we could address in further rounds of surveys. But regardless, we're seeing, people, both farmers and Agrodealers, reporting increases in inputs. We are seeing fewer Agrodealers reporting those increases, particularly for seeds. However, that's somewhat curious, but for the most part, we're seeing, large price increases for both. And as you can see in this graph on the right side, the major reason for that seems to originate with suppliers. So in this graph, you can see for the left side, you can see the prices that suppliers are charging to Agrodealers. On the right side, you can see that the price that Agrodealers say that they're charging to farmers. And for the most part, there seems to be a lot of pass-through. So the price increases passed on to the farmers are coming from higher prices from suppliers. And so going back to our recommendations, this is one reason why we want to try to establish communication channels, both between farmers and Agrodealers, as well as between Agrodealers and suppliers, so that we can try to make sure the inputs are available at affordable costs for farmers. And I think to the extent that people can pass on information about demand, that may also relieve some of the difficulties of doing that, of providing affordable inputs. So again, going back to the harvest, again, this survey took place in August to September, and or actually the last day of July up to the beginning of September. And during that time, people were saying that they still expected pretty good harvests. They also expected pretty good prices. There's a lot of optimism. Part of that is about good rains and good agricultural conditions. We did have another question that's not on these slides, but we did ask them, why do you expect good harvest? And that seemed to be the major reason. And in terms of prices, it's a little bit more curious, but for the most part, people were saying, prices, we're seeing increases in maize prices, so we expect we'll also receive higher prices. That said, people are definitely facing financial difficulties, and the major issue is not having enough money and resources to buy inputs for the next season. So of farmers who are planning to purchase inputs for the next season, 74% anticipate difficulties, and the majority of those, as you can see, is financial. So that's very worrying as well. On the positive, I guess to leave you on a positive note here, we are seeing that Agrodealers are adapting to the changing conditions. So we're seeing that they're making changes to stock, both increasing and decreasing stock. So obviously those are different people who are reporting those changes, but the point is that they are making changes to the volume that they're carrying and adapting to farmers' wishes, probably. and farmer demand. I mean, I think in some cases they aren't able to get, I know from another question that they aren't able to get the inputs that they need, but at least they are making changes to the stock such that they can address farmer demand. They're also adopting cashless transactions, both in stocking, so with suppliers, and in sales with farmers. And then in terms of changes to sales and changes to operations, a lot of these are the normal sanitary measures that people everywhere are adopting due to COVID. So that's mask wearing, gloves, sanitizing, social distancing. And it's good that Agrodealers are able to adopt these practices. It allows them to stay in business. And so moving to this chart on the left here, during the first round of surveys, we saw dramatic drops in footfall and sales. So 80% reported less footfall, 76 reported less sales, and then 62% expected less football, 63% expected fewer sales. So that's the left bar for each of the chunks here. And then you can see the round 2 results, which is the right bar. People are still seeing relatively low footfall and relatively low sales, but it's increased somewhat, and the expectations for the future are much more positive. And I think that can be partially attributed to making some of these changes, as well as curfew hours shrinking and mobility restrictions decreasing. So, I mean, a lot of factors are helping Agrodealers stay in business, but at least they're also adapting to changing circumstances. Agrodealers, there's another question that's not on these slides, but Agrodealers were also asked about the challenges that they face, and for them, a lot of it similar to the farmers, insufficient capital. So, we're seeing persistent economic effects for both Agrodealers and farmers that we'll need to address to alleviate the situation. That was a major conclusion of the survey. However, some room for hope on this slide. And with that, the presentation that I prepared is finished. As I said earlier, happy to answer any questions. Either questions, you can put them in the chat or bring them up during the discussion later on.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Samantha, for that wonderful presentation. I think now from what we are seeing from the presentation, we are getting to the next stages where we'll be able to open it up for discussion. But even before we open it up for discussion, it is important just to also be able to hear what lessons are there for us so that we can be able to maintain business momentum. I think just looking at what other people are presenting, what they are looking at, we need to change this word through a tough time, that it is not true that it's tough time, because the presenters, all the presenters, including what the survey has presented to us, the survey results, is clear that though it seems tough, but there are also opportunities. Amidst the challenges, there are also opportunities that we can be able to grab, we can be able to use for our benefit. So I don't know what Duncan has for us to present, but Duncan, I want to welcome you to just be able to tell us now what lessons have we learned, what lessons can we have so that we can be able to maintain business momentum, not really through tough times, but just through the challenges and the opportunities that COVID-19 presents to us, looking at the seed fertilizer perspective. So Duncan, most welcome, take us through this presentation. And just to let you know that we are taking note of all the questions that you are sending. So kindly, if you have questions, if you have comments, keep on sending them. Once we finish up with this section, then now we are going to get now to the plenary, where we are going to open it up, look through the questions that you have shared, look through the comments that you have shared, and they will be responded to in due course. So after this presentation, we open it up for plenary. So let's just hang on as we continue with the next session. So Duncan, feel most welcome us through the lessons that we can learn. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. I am delighted to present in this particular useful discussions. My name is Duncan Ochieng. I work with the Seed Trade Association of Kenya. I'm the executive officer. And just to say that Kenya Markets Trust is one of our key partners, especially on issues to do with seed. Most of the things that we do as Kenya Markets Trust Association of Kenya, which is a membership organization of seed companies that are dealing in formal seeds. STAC was formed in 1982, a while ago. Currently, we have 42 members, and the idea of STAC is to have, an enabling business environment, especially as far as seed is concerned. Now, my task today is very simple, is to look at how to maintain business momentum. And of course, I could see that we're supposed to be talking about seed, fertilizer, and agrochemicals. But I think I'll only confine myself to seed because that is where STRAC really has a strength in. Of course, I'll be talking about others depending on which questions there are. Cast back to March this year when we had the first case of the COVID-19. Of course, the government introduced a lockdown, which of course was threatening to everybody. We initially didn't even know that the lockdown perhaps and the COVID-19, will go long as it is now, perhaps up to sometimes next year. So in consultation with the ministry, the input sectors were given a consideration on what is called essential services. The essential services was this particular category that would allow input providers an opportunity to continue trading and to continue being in business in spite of the lockdown which was taking place then. And of course, we are grateful, and we continue to say that we're grateful that the ministry gave input providers an opportunity. So our services, although initially interrupted for a while, continue to grow and continue to be in business because our members were able now to move even outside, the areas that had lockdowns and of course, past the curfew hours. One of the things which is interesting to indicate is that when you talk to seed companies and other input providers, I was actually in some meeting a while ago, and one of the things that is coming out is that contrary to perhaps the expectation and even the fear that the pandemic would have led to less sales, it is actually the contrary, that seed companies and other inputs, I was talking to the fertilizer team and they were telling us that they've been able actually to sell fertilizer, contrary to expectation. And then the lockdown also, when you talk to people, especially those who are involved in agriculture, also indicate that there are people that finally found an opportunity to start farming. It's very interesting. You are up country, maybe you are locked down up country instead of just staying there doing nothing. Some people actually, we use the joke, they were forced into agriculture. So some of them resorted, to farming. So that gave an opportunity, especially for the crops that take a short season before they mature, and that is largely vegetables. Because the ministry, of course, through the Ministry of Health, continued to indicate that when you take vegetables, it boosts your immunity. We have information to indicate that sales for vegetable seeds also went tremendously. So of course that is good for business, and of course cumulatively is also good for the health of the population. The other thing that we also noted, which I think has also been mentioned, is in terms of technology. There was an upsurge, an increase in the use of SMS as a platform, as a way of sharing information with farmers. And of course, like STAC, we were able to use the SMS platform, to talk to farmers. I've just seen that, of course, which is true, that maize is and continues to be the #1 crop that farmers have. But we've seen an opportunity through a consortium which has been formed between the association, which is STAC, Syngenta Foundation, and also KEFIS, where we've now formed a consortium for beans, soybeans specifically. And for those who are here who want to be part of this particular process, you're welcome. We have now a soybeans consortium, which is moving with speed. The only thing we've realized is that we don't have sufficient demand, for this particular crop, so that seed companies can be able to plant. So that we see as an opportunity. The other opportunity which came in, one is not sure whether it's related to COVID or it was just an in-time development, is the issue of the e-voucher, that the government has now put in place for purposes of providing inputs to farmers. Previously, for those who have been following developments on issues of subsidy, the government generally is the one which was the largest provider, for subsidy, and seed companies, especially private seed companies, of course, were not given an opportunity. But now we see an opportunity which seed companies have been able to tap into as a way of providing seed, especially to farmers. Of course, this is through an arrangement, with the government. Something else which is important also to indicate as an opportunity, which we continue also rallying our members and other actors. I've had in the presentation a discussion around counterfeit seed. One of the things which I think should be a takeaway for all of us who are in this webinar is that in partnership with the ministry and of course KEFIS for the last 4 years, STAC has been able to continuously make an inroad on how to manage counterfeit seed. So basically what you do is that when a farmer purchases seed, they scratch the label which appears on the seed packet, and then they send it to a number 1393. Then it's able to indicate whether that particular seed packet is valid, whether it's valid or not. If it is valid, yes, it means it has been certified through the process. And if it is not, you're going to have a number against which you raise your complaints. And we have been working on this particular process with a solution provider called Degree, for which we are able to get this particular information from farmers, especially the ones where issues are being raised. And we over time, we've been able to get data from this particular process and have come up with what we are calling 2 market intelligence reports, which are shared with the stakeholders in the seed industry. And this particular report has been done, of course, with the input of Anne Wamache, who is the seeds advisor at KMT. And very quickly, some of the things which have been noted is continuously the issue of challenges to do with extension farming, because farmers continuously say they need information on this, especially crop husbandry. So I think that's something that all of us as stakeholders, perhaps we need to look at. I'm conscious of the time, so I'm almost finishing. In terms of challenges, I think which most of us can identify with is the whole issue of field days. Field days have become a continuous challenge because of restrictions and also issues to do with social distancing. And of course, field days provide an opportunity, what we call see, feel, and touch, which of course everybody would want. Now, the roadside field opportunities which were there have become a challenge. And of course, the convened field days has also become a challenge. So I think one of the things we need to discuss is how do we go about field days, as we look at the COVID. The other challenge which used to be there is to do with NPT field inspections by KEFIS, which initially was a challenge, but gradually that has been sorted out because of the use of field inspections, especially the private inspections, which have been championed and also been done by the seed, by STAC, of course, and the association members. So generally, I think these are the issues which I wanted to talk about briefly in terms of maintaining business momentum and of course the challenges. From the seed sector, I think we have been able to surmount a number of the challenges generally, as I've indicated. The ones which still continue are especially field days. How do we become innovative to make sure that we still continue with field days? Because like we can now see, we do not know for how long this new normal will be. Thank you.
Thank you, Duncan. Thank you, Duncan, for that practical presentation. Actually, that speaks to many of us, and it speaks from the heart because you've been practicing, you interact with many of the seed companies, and so we really appreciate that presentation. Now, where we are now, we are coming to the tail end of this meeting. But before we end it, of course, we have opportunity to be able to share some of our comments, some of our questions. And one thing that is coming out very clearly is the important value that is played by smallholder farmers. But also inherently, there have been challenges that have been highlighted. But we also see an opportunity in terms of what different bodies, different organizations offer. Particularly, technology seems to be playing a very key role. And how we use technology is going to either benefit or harm the farmers that are already suffering as a result of the pandemic. But one of the things that is coming out very clearly is the key role that, collaboration, networking, and partnerships can play. And we are all together in this game. And so when we look at now what we have been able to do, we look at what we have been able to present. There are, of course, comments and also questions that needs to be answered. The presentation that was presented really well highlighted some of the challenges, some of the opportunities that exist amidst the COVID-19. So just getting now to the plenary session, I see there are already some comments and some questions that have been presented to us. For example, one of the comments is from Tony Limo. Tony Limo says that there are a lot of startups across the country bringing innovative solutions to smallholder farmers. And what is urging now is urging all developed organizations and other stakeholders in the agriculture sector offer partnerships, collaborations, networks, so that we can be able to provide better quality services to farmers and also to be able to raise finances to those startups. I think that is a very good observation, Tony, that you have mentioned. And I just want to challenge all of us that we are here. But, we can also be able to respond even on the charts that how best can we be able to offer these partnerships, collaboration, and network, be able to provide those better quality services. Now, the second question goes to, I think this is Esther. No, this is Samantha. A question comes to you that asks from Amos Wanyiri. Amos Wanyiri wants to understand that, did you explore what efforts input companies are adapting to in terms of supply chain that will cushion agro-dealers and ultimately farmers to facilitate access and reduce transaction costs? So the concern here is about transaction cost. The concern here is about access and transaction cost. So Samantha, you will be able to respond to this in terms of exploring the efforts that input companies can be able to put in place to adapt so that we can be able to cushion the agro dealers, and that will translate in also cushioning farmers. The third question goes to Esther Moiri. Esther, in light of the high lending risk of farmers, from your experience, having a hybrid model within equity, will you recommend a unique banking model? Okay, so that something that is similar that we see in the Islamic banking. So this is one that comes to you. And second question, also that is related to that hybrid model of equity, is also that majority of the farmers currently do not have smartphones. I hope this is true. So majority of the farmers do not have smartphones. So Simon wanted to understand, how does equity been reaching this group of farmers, especially those that are secluded out of those with smartphones? What is equity doing to reach this group? Then finally, to Esther, is that from equity perspective, why are clients not taking up various products? For example, a number claim conditions are not favorable. So if the conditions for taking some of these products are not favorable, how do we facilitate? How do we make sure that we are able to address some of those that feel that they are neglected? Of course, we'll be able to share the presentation with all of us, as has been asked. The presentation that have been made in this webinar will be shared. But already, if you look at the charts, we have also been able to indicate some links which you can be able to access and look at the presentation. So even as we answer those questions, I want to also give opportunity. If there is somebody who wants to raise a question, you can raise up your hand, you can ask your question, and we tend to follow the time that we agreed to finish. So hopefully by 11, we shall be able to conclude. So if you have a question, you can be able to put it in the chat. in the question and answer chat, or you can be able to raise up your hand and we'll be able to answer that. So first of all, let me ask Samantha to go first in terms of explaining other companies, and then Esther, you will be able to answer the three questions that concerns equity. So Samantha?
I think you're breaking up a little bit, but the question that I understood was, are we working with suppliers to understand the input availability? Is that the question?
Yes, Samantha. The question is about somebody wanted to understand why did you explore what efforts input companies are adapting to in the supply chain so that we are able to cushion agro-dealers, and that will also end up cushioning farmers. And by doing that, we'll be able to facilitate access and reduce transaction costs. So is just wanting to understand whether that was explored in our study. Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, so far we've really focused on surveying. So we've done 2 rounds of surveys. Another thing I should have mentioned in my presentation is that next week we're planning to begin a 3rd round of surveys. Having issues with my video, I'm sorry about that. But anyway, in response, we are discussing potentially reaching out to suppliers. We've asked in the previous round of surveys and in the following round of surveys, we did ask agro-dealers how many suppliers they were using and which factors they were choosing their suppliers based on. And we're hoping to eventually use that information to try to figure out a solution. Most likely it will be connecting agro-dealers to suppliers in some way to communicate their needs and indirectly communicate farmer needs and demands. We're still sort of in the brainstorming stage of how to address these results, and we have a number of ideas, of which I highlighted a few in the recommendations. But if you have specific ideas of ways that we can address these challenges, I encourage you to reach out to us as well, because we're still in the stage of collecting results and trying to formulate solutions. But working directly with suppliers or working with agro-dealers and suppliers, trying to address issues in the supply chain is definitely one of the solutions that we're considering.
Thank you. Just something related to that before I let you go, Samantha, is a question that from your assessment, on the effect of on agriculture, did you find any disruption in distribution channels, both in terms of input and output markets? So were you able to find any disruption in terms of distribution channel? If at all you found some of this, which are these specific solution actors that you will identify that were mostly affected, and what suggestions can you give so that they can be able to be resilient in the future? Thank you. That is from Tibet Walter.
Yeah, so I'm trying to find the exact results, but I mean, one thing that comes to mind that we found is that agro-dealers who were delivering inputs to farmers, or also that were receiving inputs delivered to them from suppliers, were more likely to stay in business and have footfall and sales, like to not have footfall and sales decrease. I need to find the exact result, but that's one thing. Another thing that helped is people that were communicating more often with farmers. So agro-dealers that were communicating more than once per day with farmers were also seeing fewer drops in footfall and sales. So in general, it seems like the more communication and the more mobility that agro-dealers had, the better they were at keeping business going. And those are, I guess that points to distribution being a potential challenge for agro-dealers that either don't have a means of having their stock delivered or delivering their stock, and also may not have frequent communication with farmers.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Samantha, for those responses. I want to believe that Beth and Amos, you are satisfied. Now, I want to ask Esther to be able to answer the three questions. One was in the light of high lending risks of farmers. From your experience, having a hybrid model of equity help, and what are some of our recommendations, something that is similar to Islamic banking. Then we had a question on the aspect of majority of farmers not having smartphones. So how do you reach them? And then finally, a concern just from equity point of view, why are clients not taking up the various products? Because a number of them claim that they are not conditions to pick up those products that on insurance and such like are not very favorable. What can we do to be able to facilitate that? So Esther, over to you.
Sorry.
Sorry, Chris, Esther has dropped off.
Oh, Esther, sorry for that. Do you have anybody in the panel who will answer some of those few questions? Anybody, any panelist who will want to respond to just one or two of those questions?
Thank you, Chris. I think I would want to respond to the issue of technology generally. The kind of SMS platform that we are using to make sure that farmers are able to determine whether the seed they are purchasing is counterfeit or not is such that you can use it for, you can use the very, very, very basic phone, which in Kenya we call Mulikamwizi. So one does not need a smartphone. All you need is a phone that, of course, has charge, and of course, which is usable. And the other thing which sometimes people ask from time to time is the issue of the cost. This particular application is in such a way that when a farmer sends that particular digit to 1393, it is already catered for, because that's a question I think we normally get from people that is it possible then that the use of a technology will now make the cost of seed input to be high? So the answer is that that is already factored in. So I think I don't want to talk a lot about issues to do with microfinance, issues to do with lending. That is not my preview, but I just thought of chipping in on issues of technology that even the very basic phone called Kabambe is used for purposes of managing counterfeit seed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Duncan, for that response. I think we are having the last part where we want to allow maybe 2 or 3 more questions, then we can be able to conclude this session. I just wanted to also appreciate the comments and responses that we are also getting from the chat. For example, issues around certified seed, which is often affordable to smallholder farmers, but calls for financial support from financial institutions, government subsidies, that has also been mentioned. But importantly is to note the issues around certified seeds being associated with resistance to biotic and abiotic stresses, so which can be able to guarantee better yields, so both in the short and in the long run. I also saw somebody just wanted to ask that in the surveys that we have done, the first survey was biased towards dairy, and the second survey was just to be able to read it well. But what the person will want to understand is that what is to expect in the third round of the survey, because the first round of survey was biased on dairy, the second one was biased on maize. What about the third round, and do we expect any new findings? So maybe Samantha, you will want to respond to that. Dina asked that question.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to type a response, but I think there's a clarification needed. For both the first and the second round, we had 2 separate surveys. One was focusing on crop farmers, the second one was focusing on agrodealers. For the crop farmers, we asked them, what is the primary crop that you grow? Most people, I think, going back to the first slide, 78% said 79% said maize. However, we had others saying beans and tomatoes and all sorts of other crops. And also, just because they're growing maize doesn't mean they're not growing other crops. It just means that they said that that was their primary crop. A different question asked about what's a multiple response question about what you grow and what you plan to grow in the next season. And people said maize as well as other crops. So we know that some of these maize farmers are growing other crops. In the first round of surveys, we did additionally do a third survey on dairy farmers. It was very small. It was around 100 farmers, and the results weren't very informative. And another issue is that we currently are in the pilot phase for developing a dairy advisory service. I'm actually working on it, and one issue is that we're trying to collect results that will inform future interventions. So we wanted to make sure that we use the resources that we have to collect as much information about crop farmers and agri-dealers, because we're best placed to implement an intervention that will help them mitigate the effects of COVID. So just to clarify the question, for both rounds 1 and 2, we interviewed crop farmers and agri-dealers, not specifically maize farmers, but it turned out that most people were maize farmers. And for round 3, we'll be focusing on the same population. Another point I want to make is just that as much as possible, we've tried to continue with the same respondents across different rounds, because one thing we're looking at is we're trying to ask the same questions multiple times over a period of months and see if the responses change. So, for example, we saw, not very many people not very many people saying that they switched jobs in the first round. But in the second round, we saw a much higher number. Same thing for all sorts of other results that we presented here, like footfall in sales, input prices, various other things changed over time. And we're trying to understand, is that because these are new respondents or because of changing times, changing practices over time? And so as much as possible, we're trying to keep the original sample. So round 3, like rounds 1 and 2, will consist of 2 surveys, one for crop farmers and one for agri-dealers.
Thank you so much, Samantha, for that response. Just concern, even as we come to the end of this, that in future, you could also consider importers and distributors as part of that survey. Perhaps somebody feels that will also give additional information that will be very informative. Looking at the question and answer section, I see there are no more questions, but people are very happy with the responses that we have given. There are also responses that some people have also been giving, even on the chat, which is very good. So that we are able to manage our time clearly, and because there are no more questions, I want now to bring in Wario Bonaya, who is the head of programs at Kenya Markets Trust, to give us his closing remarks. Wario, most welcome.
Chris, sorry, can I say something for a second only? Just for a second. This is Duncan.
Yes, Duncan, you can say something before Wario comes in. That's fine.
Just for a second. I think there's a question which has been raised around the cost of seed, which is expensive to farmers, which is true. There is currently an ongoing project and process under Kenya Climate Smart Agriculture Project, which is looking at other alternative seeds. And we are currently having those discussions where seeds can be obtained, for example, from growers. So we are looking at opportunities to make seed to be affordable. And then, of course, the last one is where we are looking at another class of seed, which is called standard seed, which is currently under pilot. And that is also going to make the prices for seed, to be comparatively affordable to farmers. So yes, the prices of seed is high, but we are looking at efforts to make it affordable. Thank you.
Much, Duncan, for that response. We really appreciate. So at this point, allow me now to welcome in Wario Bonaya, the head of programs at Kenya Markets Trust, to give us his closing remark. Welcome, Wario.
Thank you very much, Chris. Let me take this opportunity to appreciate all the members who have been able to create time out of their busy schedule to participate in this very important conversation. It has been quite interesting to hear the different perspectives the key component that has come out is that appreciating the importance of smallholder farmers and agriculture to Kenya's economy. And therefore, we need to have a robust risk mitigation measures to enhance the resilience of the sector. We need to adopt more of proactive measures to both natural and man-made calamities and reduce instances of being reactive. It has been clearly demonstrated with locust invasion, with COVID-19, that largely we tend to react on reactive mode rather than being proactive. And therefore, in order to mitigate future natural and man-made calamities, as a sector players, we need to have very robust, well-articulated risk mitigation measures. And that is quite critical. We cannot overemphasize the impact of COVID-19 to smallholder farmers and agro-dealers, and this should help us prepare adequately for future pandemics. There are two schools of thought. One school of thought that says the next pandemic will be in the next 8 years, based on the various models. For instance, we had SARS in 2020, the year 2000, and then after that we had MERS, and after MERS then we had COVID. And the various models have shown that the time span is between 7 to 8 years. So we don't know whether 2028 we will have something similar to this scale. And therefore, it's good that we prepare adequately. It is important to recognize the role of agro-dealers in filling the gap of extension services. Michael has clearly stipulated that this country has got 5,000 extension service officers, and that is not adequate. And that gap can only be filled by other service providers and agro-dealers. And therefore, there's need for us to rethink on how to support agro-dealers. And it's quite imperative to know that agro-dealers are now shifting their business practice from just product push to include also service provision. In the new normal, it's quite evident that crop insurance and livestock insurance is becoming very essential in enhancing farmer resilience. And KMT has got experience in both crop and livestock insurance, and we'll be quite delighted to progress this discussion to the next level with different stakeholders, from the private sector to the government to the civil society, so that we move the agenda from the table and we move it to where the rubber meets the road. Additionally, it's also important to note that in the new normal and with the climate change, there is huge change in dynamics, and there is need to rethink our financing of agriculture. Our planting seasons are no longer the same as what we had 10 years ago. Our harvesting season has also shifted, and this calls for redesigning the financing instrument for farmers and agro-dealers. We've talked a lot about technology, and it's good also to mention in this platform that Kenya is home to a quarter of Africa's ICT-based technology. We have over 400 ICT agricultural-based technology in Africa, and Kenya is home to a quarter of that. And mobile penetration among farmers has reached a critical mass where we can promote adoption of technology in extension services. And KMT has identified technology as a key game changer in enhancing agriculture and promoting agriculture to the next level. And we are ready to partner with technopreneurs to develop and implement technology-enabled extension services. In the new normal, we need to strengthen coordination, partnership, collaboration, and networking among different partners. And I like the point that was brought out by Esther, that we should not view a certain element of agriculture separately from the wider ecosystem. And she was giving the example of soil testing. Soil testing should also somehow be linked with financing, so that when you do your soil testing, it will tell you what sort of crop can do well in that particular soil, and then you'll be able to arrange your financing instrument accordingly. So moving farmers from the guesswork, moving farmers from hobby farming to commercial farming, which is quite critical. It's also important to mention here, stipulated in Agricultural Sector Transformation and Growth Strategy, ASTG, it is very critical to recast Kenya's agriculture towards meaningful transformation. This will include adopting commercial practices among smallholder farmers, use of technology, and improving farmer agricultural practice, quite critical. And as I've said, most of our farmers are hobby farmists. We need to move them to commercial farming so that we can realize the potential of agriculture in this country. I think I need to re-emphasize once again, financing across the agricultural value chain is becoming a critical enabling factor, which needs to be addressed by different stakeholders. A key component here is issues to do with the organic farming vis-a-vis the conventional farming. As we are all aware, our productivity levels compared with countries such as Tanzania, South Africa, and even Uganda is quite low. So the whole discourse around we promote more of organic farming, which has got lower yield in the initial phases, vis-a-vis promoting best practices using the conventional farming is quite critical. And therefore, there's need for us to find a useful balance between organic farming and conventional practice. At the macro level, and this is quite evident for importers, there is need to stabilize the weakening shilling to cushion importers of critical inputs so that this currency exchange risk is not transferred to farmers. Our shillings has really weakened from an exchange rate of 100 to today, I think 113, and this cost ultimately will be transferred to farmers. In conclusion, what I want to say is that with over 10,000 agro-dealers spread across the country, there's need to rethink agro-dealer engagement strategy and support structure. We need to consider agro-dealer accreditation and supporting effective agro-dealer association. That is quite critical because agro-dealers are becoming a critical agent in last mile distribution, and we need to rethink how we can support agro-dealer association. With those few remarks, let me once again take this opportunity to appreciate all of you who have made time out of your busy schedule to participate in this very engaging webinar. At this point, I will hand it over to our moderator to close with a word of prayer. Thank you very much. Chris, over to you. Colleagues, because I can't see Chris coming on and we are almost reaching the agreed time, I will ask Alex Kandie to say a word of prayer for us and then we close the session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Wario. Let us pray. Lord, we thank you for the opportunity that you've given to us and that you've allowed us to be able to deliberate on various issues that affect the rural farming community in Kenya. Thank you for the research that was conducted and for the critical outputs from it. As we continue to digest and deliberate on the conversations and discussions, may be with us and may help us to put this into practice. We commit the rest of our day into your hands and we ask, Lord, that you be with us and take care of us. In Jesus' name we do pray. Amen.
Thank you very much. We can now all leave at our pleasure. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much, Wario. Thank you everybody for participation. We really appreciate. We are free to leave the meeting. Thank you.